Alrighty, the last one I made you didn't hear any sound. It was actually some stuff up in YouTube because I went into audio improvements and I could hear the sound again. And then I said save as that, and then it just cut the sound out just like it was originally. So, who knows. Anyway, in the little news app that comes with Windows 10, I had something come up there. And it basically said hold tight for China's, I forgot how it put it. It was almost something along the lines of major banking crisis or something like this. Or something, pretty dramatic, which basically signified that, according to the article, I didn't read the whole article, but it expected, it says China's right on the verge of having a major banking system crisis, I think was how it put it. And yeah, long story short, it's really going to hit the deck hard. Now, China is a funny place. I've come to learn a bit about it since working for two very wealthy Chinese. It's bizarre. There's so many bullshit corruption things that happen on a state level, and the federal government is always trying to stamp out state level corruption and local corruption. But they've got a saying there, something along the lines of when the emperor is many hills away, things will just go on regardless of what the emperor has said. They have another thing there where it's a bit of a hit and miss sort of a concept, but I've heard of the phrase to kill the chicken to scare the monkey, and that basically means that if there's some guys getting their ass whooped for corruption, those who haven't been caught yet will cease corruption for fear that they're going to get caught and face the same consequences. And yeah, they've still got capital punishment over there in China. But all the same, they're sort of, I could see it in Chinese boss, it's like they've never seen the concept of a recession. They've been poor for, since the 1950s, basically. Well, ever since, before that, ever since the dawn of time, really. Chinese have always been, the majority of them, as peasants. And, then you'd have emperors and stuff like that who are exceedingly rich. But it's almost like as though, and they actually say this phrase, the time for our country has come. And so it's like, good, finally, things are going to work out. And they've got this idea of, it's been so bad for long, now we're, for so long, now we're going to get it to be, up to a Western country. But they expect to be able to just sort of go from where they have been, which is third world, second world status, really a second world status, up to first world status in one step. Not a series of booms and recessions, but just in one giant boom that then just levels off with no recession. They sort of don't really understand the concept of a recession because they haven't seen any kind of boom to be able to see a boom followed by a recession. And, he even used to ask me about what my views were on the wine industry and stuff like that, and I said, look, I've just seen so many people come through and go flat on their face. Oh, I reckon it'll get bigger and this and that. And it's sort of an eternal optimist, which, you've got to be to have a real go in business. But, yeah, there's something that's been going on over there for quite some time. It was after the GFC, they sort of handed out a lot of money to, bail things out, so to speak, as they did in the West. But I've seen Hank Paulson, former Secretary of the Fed or whatever he was, on TV saying that they knew China would have some sort of a bailout, some sort of a stimulus package, but it was 8 to 20 times the size of what they expected it to be. They said it might have even said more. I think he said something like 20 to 40 times the size. It was just astronomically larger than anybody saw coming. That fired things up a bit, obviously, when they decided that after the GFC went down, a lot of factory people lost their jobs, and they said, well, we're going to create internal growth by building ourselves all apartments and getting people out of shitty little third-rate stone buildings in the country into multi-storey buildings and city living, and get up the people's consumerism so that those who are still in factory jobs remain in factory jobs as the new middle class become city-dwelling consumers. So they went berserk on an absolute frenzy of construction. And that was the new boom, that was reinflating the bubble. But instead of cheap stuff to America, it was building jobs inside their own country. Now, after this big bailout, the banks there, which, believe it or not, are not just completely controlled by the Fed, and, as they say, when things are many moons away or many hills away from the emperor, stuff goes on. They have private banks there, and the Feds realised that the lending was getting a bit crazy. They were lending out money to any person who had a business proposition, and it was getting a bit crazy. So they said, okay, that's it, bang. We've got to sort of stem the lending and pretty much stop the lending until we see sort of things wind up and money being paid back and things getting going. Well, of course, all these local guys didn't like that, because it's basically being told that you can't issue new loans until other ones get paid off. And they'd been going handing this stuff out flat out. And it pretty much was just, it wasn't a slight stemming, it was a dramatic stem. It was almost like a dead still stop was what the Feds wanted. Didn't go down well at all. So out of that, typical Chinese style, everything just moved underground. And what they done was they created a shadow banking system. This is the private people who were, running banks beforehand. And they would have these strange little companies that would be soy sauce manufacturing or just whatever the hell. And there would be no factory, no bottling plant, nothing, just an office. And what they were, they structured it right and done the taxes correctly and everything like this to set it up to basically be another bank. And of course they already had existing customers from their lending in the official bank, and when that was pretty much stemmed by the Feds, they said, fuck it, I'm not just going down like this. I've got customers who want me to lend them money. I want to keep lending out money because it's making me money. And so they continued on in these fake businesses that were actually banks, disguised as other businesses. And in that, they have official figures of the proper banking system and how much money they've lent out. And Chinese government's figures are always a bit scratchy as it is, but very exaggerated most often. But they've got the official figures. The shadow banking figures, it's all underground. It's like the flaming drug trade. Nobody knows really. They've got a random guess, and they don't know how far they've gone and how much they've lent out. But in all this, the chickens are going to come home to roost. I have seen figures where they show Chinese growth versus Chinese lending, and it's almost parallel. No, actually, yeah, the productivity or the GDP versus the spending versus the money borrowing, and the money borrowing's going up and up, and I think the production or whatever is only going about a quarter of the ratio, like a 4-to-1 ratio of the money being lent out. So instead of lending money and it creating a whole heap more, it's only creating about a quarter of what was lent out initially, and they're, just keep lending it out. And that's the official figures. That's not the one in the shadow banking system, because nobody even knows what that is. Because now obviously, the Fed sort of put the stranglehold on too much lending for 2 years or something like that, and now it's all back to normal, and they're allowed to lend out, but their lending is just going bonkers, and it's not like they lend $100 and it makes $150. It's more like they lend $100 and it makes $25 or $20. It's just looking pitiful, but they haven't really thought it out. So then they'll go and lend $500 to make 100 or 120, and then they've turned that to $5,000 to make 1,400, and it just sort of, things ain't getting any better based on how much they're lending out. And there's the thing, in the conspiracy theory circles you'll hear there's big calamities. In the financial community circles you'll hear, I expect an upcoming this and this, here are my charts, here are my figures, this shows what happened back in 1990 whatever, this is what's likely to happen now, but add into that quantitative easing and it will probably go like this. And they project these things and they've got solid figures behind it. It's not just conspiracy claptrap. But you'll hear something on the finance sector and it may take 6 months before it hits mainstream media. And basically it's a bit like, there's a time a while back with the gold price, it was around the GFC, or just after it I think, gold price just went frickin' skyrocketed. I think it was about 2010 it went berserk. And long story short, by the time it hit mainstream media, which it did, one of the mobs that I've bought bullion off actually ended up on TV news being asked questions about the gold price going up so dramatically. By the time it's on mainstream media, it's too late. If you watch financial channels, you sort of get the jump, and by the time the mainstream media has bought it out, it's already underway. It's gold price is up, we better invest in gold. If the mainstream media is telling you gold price is up, it's too late. The time to buy was bloody 6 months ago or a year ago. But yeah, now when the mainstream media says China's about to flame and have real issues, well, guess what? It's it's too late. It's already underway. And if you're heavily invested in that, well, you probably won't even be able to sell your way out, because everybody now knows that there's troubles in that area. Anyway, quite honestly, I just wish, instead of pouring out all this quantitative easing, I've seen all the figures of quantitative easing by the Fed, including the tapering, and they showed all of them combined, Bank of Japan, Bank of England, US Federal Reserve and European Central Bank. At the moment the quantitative easing is the highest it's ever been, primarily caused by Bank of Japan and the European Central Bank, who are the ones roaring out money or yens and euros rather, and it's the highest it's ever been, you know, with negative interest rates and all this sort of stuff. They're going like hell, and they're getting to the point that if they keep going down this path for another year and a half, you'll understand personally what hyperinflation is, especially if you live in the Eurozone. It's just going bullshit. But this is the thing they're doing, anything to forestall a true collapse, trying to save it from a collapse. But what you want to do is not save it from a collapse. It's like being sick. If you hold on and you hold on and you hold on and try not to throw up and try not to throw up, most of you will know that you're actually better to fucking throw up, get it out of your system, and then 5 minutes after you've thrown up, you start feeling a lot better again. And then you sit down and you relax, and maybe another 20 minutes time you have a little bit of water, you know, and you'll come back too. But all this trying to stop yourself from throwing up, sometimes you're better just to throw up and get it over with. And the same happens with financial collapse. Sometimes you are better just to stop trying to tape together a bullshit situation where there's no sales, there's no confidence, there's useless future prospects backed up by a whole heap of industries which are subsidised and bailed out to the shit house, which really shouldn't be still going, and just get it over with. Finish it all off. And if everyone lands on their arse on welfare for a year or two, whatever, you've got it out of the system and you can start again, and then you'll experience growth from the ground up. There may be a bit of a point where you know, floundering in the sand there for a bit, but how well are things going if we keep trying to prop up things as it is? Because it's getting so slow with world trade, with the Baltic Dry Index, which is, you know, the amount of shit coming from China, you know, which is often seen as a measure of the entire world trade. If it's so bloody slow, what are we trying to keep going here, you know? What are we trying to bail out, prop up and print money over, you know? We're trying to keep together a system which isn't even actually functioning properly as it is. So it's time that I think we just need to get it over with. Don't worry about me. Some of you guys know of a particular little investment. If things turn real bad, I'll be fine. In fact, I realise that my current standard of living, I've got enough of that shit to last me an entire year, even if the welfare system collapsed completely and there are absolutely no jobs out there. And that's at my current standard of living. But anyway, just thought I'd tell you guys that if it's turned up in the mainstream media, it means that it is not something that's in the pipeline, but something that is already here.